People of the State of Michigan versus Anthony Price. The jurors are all back and we're ready to begin with opening statements. Any matters we need to address before we allow the jury back in?
None from the people, Your Honor.
And I don't see any witnesses in here, but is this a sequestration request?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes.
Sequestration is granted. Sequestration is granted. Okay, you can call the jury back.
So that they know.
All right.
Very good. You can be seated. Okay, we'll begin with opening statements. Are you gonna make the opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you can begin.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. My name is Jeffrey Delabay. I had introduced myself earlier when we were talking about what the like I said, the goal was to choose people who are fair and impartial, and I hope you maintain the same fairness and impartiality throughout this very short jury trial. And I believe the evidence, after you've heard all the evidence, you will find this defendant guilty of assault and battery beyond a reasonable doubt. Ladies and gentlemen, in this phase, this is what we call an opening statement. The way I like to think about an opening statement is like a movie preview, right? I'm basically going to highlight what the evidence will show. Basically what a movie preview does, it shows you what you're expecting to see in the movie, basically highlighting the exciting parts or the important parts of the movie. And so this is what it really is. This is an opening statement that's telling you what I believe the evidence will show. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe the evidence will show that on April 13, 2023, this defendant attacked two victims. The first victim, her name is Tiante, and another one is Nathan. And I want to make sure I get his name right, Nathan Harris. You will hear evidence that they live in this building, and you will hear the evidence what led up to that altercation. Ladies and gentlemen, you will hear that Tiante suffered injuries as a result of the assault. You will hear evidence that he punched her repeatedly in her face. She will be here, she will testify to that fact. You will also hear from Nathan, who will tell you upon seeing what defendant was doing to Tiante, he runs to her, he too gets assaulted. You will be here to testify to what happened on that day. You'll also hear testimony from a police officer, Officer Donovan Moore. He will tell you his observations, why he was discharged there, what he observed. And I believe the evidence will show that he observed evidence at Tiante with blood in her nose as a result of this sustained attack. Ladies and gentlemen, again, I want to be upfront with you. I carry the burden of proof. And that burden is to prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt. Not all doubt, not every doubt, beyond a reasonable doubt. It cannot be beyond all doubt because then it means you would have seen it. You were there, you witnessed it, which means what happens? I'd call you to the stand to testify because you saw it. All you're dealing here with is the stories I tell you, the stories the victim tell you, the stories the witnesses tell you, and opposing counsel tells you. That's why my burden of proof, which I carry, is beyond a reasonable doubt. That is a doubt that is based on reason and common sense. At the end of this evidence, and I hope the evidence will be sufficient, you will find this defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of assault and battery on 2 counts. Thank you so much.
Mr. Allen.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm probably already feel like you've been here a long time, but we're just getting started. My name is Jacob Rowley, as introduced earlier. Again, I'm Jacob Rowley. My name is Anthony Price. I'm his attorney. Banging today. We've been told that this case is about Anthony Price. It's about the 2 individuals that accused him of assault. It's not really about that. I think it's about a lot more than that. They've been waived. It's about all of us. Our right to feel safe in our homes. Right to live in our families are safe, protected. It's about a person's right to exist peacefully in this community, be treated fairly. We're going to hear a lot of things said today, a lot of statements from different witnesses. Searches going around. It's going to be a lot. Some of those statements are going to contradict each other, they're not going to agree. I think when you look at all of it, you can find the truth in there somewhere. I think the truth has a way of finding it. Told that my client assaulted 2 people. What's going on? When you hear that, you hear the description of those events, it doesn't make sense to me. I want you to think about why things are being said. And let me think about what you think really matters. On top of that, I want you to think about something that frankly I always think about. If I were on trial, what I'd be afraid of, what would I expect from jurors? I think the bare minimum is certainly you expect them to listen, consider everything they hear carefully, to make an informed decision about what they believe to be true. Really do that. And I know that when it's all said and done, they make the correct decision.
You can call your first witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The people will call to the stand Officer Donovan Moore.
You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're going to give is the truth and the whole truth under penalty of perjury.
I do.
Thank you, Officer Moore. You can have a seat. You can state your first and last name and spell both.
Donovan Moore, DONOVANMOORE.
You can proceed.
Officer Moore, how are you employed?
As a patrol officer for Lansing Police Department.
And how long have you been doing that?
Approximately 5 years now.
Okay. And as a patrol officer, what are some of your day-to-day duties?
Responding to calls, citizens will call dispatch for whatever reasons, and I come out for reports or calls about citizens.
Okay. Before you worked for Lansing Police Department, do you have any previous law enforcement experience apart from this?
No.
Now, Officer Moore, I want to take your attention to the events that happened on April 13, 2023. Do you remember that day?
Yes.
Did you get a call for a dispatch somewhere?
Yes.
And what was the nature of that dispatch?
Dispatch to 416 West Genesee Street for an assault.
Okay. Is that in the city of Lansing?
Yes, it is.
Ingham County?
Yes.
Ingham County, state of Michigan?
Yes.
Now, when you got there, what were some of your observations?
So initially I was dispatched for an assault. Kennedy called saying a 43-year-old black male assaulted her and then went back inside of apartment 3. When I arrived on the scene, I talked to Kennedy. She told me about basically what led up to the assault. Where she had her dogs outside. some of the kids in apartment number 3 were kind of barking at her dogs, drawing them up. So she went to go speak to them. At that point, the kids were back in apartment number 3. So started knocking on the door in apartment number 3, trying to talk, and then kids were just screaming and telling no one was answering. She goes back to her apartment in number 2, that's directly below apartment number 3. And telling me the accused, she described as a 40-year-old black male, 6'1", 210 pounds, with long dreads to the shoulder. This person knocked on the door, and so she opened it, brief conversation, and then the male told her he was a fighter. So she closed the door. She called Nathan Harris. At that point, Nathan arrived on scene. She told me that she saw Nathan arriving on scene, and the male that knocked on the door began assaulting, fighting. At that point, she started calling 911. The male that was punching and assaulting Nathan looked at Kennebrew, grabbed her by the hair, and started punching her in her face 3 or 4 times.
Okay. Did you observe any injuries on her?
Yes.
And what did those injuries look like?
It was a bloody nose.
Okay. And what was her demeanor at that point?
She was very upset. She was telling me how upset she was. So I called the ambulance for her to check out.
Okay. As part of your observations, as part of your investigation, did you learn that there was another person who was assaulted?
Yes.
Did you learn the name of that person?
Nathan Harris.
Okay. And did Nathan also live at that place?
Yes, he lived at that place.
Okay. And so did Miss Kennebrew, is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, was she treated, but did Miss Kennebrew get treated by any medications as a result of her injuries?
She got transported to Sparrow, so the hospital. I don't know if she was Sparrow or time, but she got transported. Assuming Sparrow because it's closer to work.
Okay. Now, what else did you do as part of your investigation?
I was advised that the person was in apartment number 3, and so I tried to make contact with the person, try to get some more information about what happened, try to get both an understanding both sides. I met a woman through the door, Monica Hill, I believe her name was, and she told me there was somebody inside. It was kind of her cousin, then it was her nephew, then it was her boyfriend's son. I didn't really get much of anything.
So let's go back to the identification part. You learned the perpetrator of this offense was a black male.
Yes.
You learned that the person had long dreads.
Yes.
Okay. Did you happen to see anyone who matched the description of that person while you were walking inside the house?
I never walked inside the house. I was only at the front door of apartment number 3. I did not see anybody, but I was advised by another officer. I got there with Officer Ellis. He said he briefly saw somebody, but the blinds closed so fast he couldn't really get a clear picture.
Okay. And did you attempt to find this person on that day at all?
I did. Other than that, that was the best that I could do since I was told that he was inside. So other than that, I couldn't really do anything else.
Okay. Thank you, Anna. That's all the questions I have.
Cross-examination.
Thank you.
Officer Moore, so this all occurred on April 13th, 2023, is that correct?
Yes.
What time of day was it
10:10 at night.
that you responded to the call?
Yes.
At that time, did you speak to Nathan Harris at all?
Briefly, so like most scenes, it's a lot of people are talking at once, and so I mean I'm hearing him, hearing her, and usually 2 officers will split up to one each person get a statement.
So what did Nathan Harris have to say about that?
Objection, Your Honor, that will be hearsay.
Do you want to respond to the objection?
I'm trying to get the officer's impression of what he experienced on the call. Maybe questioning Nathan Harris, of course, as well.
Objections overruled. You can respond.
I did not formally speak with them. I had Officer Ellis spoke with.
Do you recall anything of note that you learned from that interview?
Andrew,
with Mr. Harris?
nothing, no.
Is that the only time you went to that location that night?
I don't recall that.
Did you not return later that night to the second call?
I don't recall that specifically.
If I were to show you a police report, would that refresh your memory?
Might, yes.
Your Honor, I would like to know which part of the police report counsel is attempting to refresh the memory.
I'll show you.
You know what, scratch it. I wrote this police report down. I do want to know though. So you didn't speak to Nathan Harris directly, is that what you were saying?
Not enough to get a formal statement.
You were present when you speak to Officer Ellis.
No, I'm listening to one person at a time. I can't hear two people talking.
In brief experience with Nathan Harris, did he appear to be injured at all?
No,
Going back, you spoke to Ms. Kennebrew, of course.
yes,
You said that she appeared to be somewhat hurt.
yes.
But going back, I want to get into a little bit more detail. How did she describe this incident?
Outside with the neighbor's kids, so
Okay. And that's what I'm wondering. So what about the dogs and the kids? Did you get into that?
yeah, so the dogs outside for number 10 group, she lives in apartment number 2, and the dogs are outside. She was telling me about the kids that live in apartment number 3, which is directly above her, barking at the dogs. So she would have to stop, so she came outside and stopped.
Say what happened between her and the kids.
She told me by the time she made time, she was trying to talk to the kids, they were on the other side of apartment number 3, and then they were just screaming.
She, rather, when Mr. Price made contact with her, where were they located?
Kids,
Where, I'm sorry, where was Ms. Kennedy?
she was outside.
She was outside when Mr. Price made contact.
Yes,
And was Mr. Harris present at that time as well?
Yeah.
So clear, the kids were not outside at that time.
not that I know. She didn't say the kids were outside, came back outside after the fact. They were inside.
Into where the dogs were located during all this.
Objection has been answered.
Sustain, you don't have to answer that.
Said you did not make contact with Mr. Price that night, is that correct?
That's correct.
Did you make contact with him at any point?
None that I remember in regards to this.
Do you have contact with Mr. or rather with Ms. Kennebrew or Mr. Harris after that night?
Not that I remember.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect.
Just briefly, Your Honor. So let's talk about essentially what caused this altercation. You said there were children in an apartment above, is that correct? And the children were antagonizing the dog?
It was barking.
Okay. And who owned the dog that was being antagonized? Okay, so it was her dog that was being antagonized, is that correct? Okay. And she attempted to take measure to get that to stop, is that correct?
Yes.
And is that why she got assaulted?
I don't know why she got it. That's what the conversation was.
Thank you, Your Honor. That's all the questions I have.
Any questions from the jury? May this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, Officer Moore, you may be excused. Our next witness. the people calling?
The people are calling Tiante Kennebrew. She's one of the victims.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're going to give us the truth and the whole truth under the penalty of perjury?
Yes.
Okay, you can have a seat there, ma'am. There's a microphone that's in front of you. The lady directly behind you is my court reporter. She has to take down everything that's being stated here today. So your responses must be loud and clear so we can hear you. There's a fan running. We have plastic partitions. And so you got to keep your voice elevated so that we can hear you clearly, okay?
Okay.
Your responses must be verbal. We can't do head nods and shakes or mm-hs and uh-huhs. Otherwise, we'll ask you if that's a yes or a no. If there's an objection from either attorney, you would stop speaking immediately. I'll make a ruling on the objection. I'll tell you if you can give us that answer or not. State your first and your last name and then spell both of them.
Tiante Kennebrew, Teonta. Last name Kennebrew, Kinne, V as in boy, REW.
You can proceed, counsel.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Kennebrew, where do you live?
Grand Ledge now,
Okay. Where did you leave on April 13, 2023?
416 West Genesee.
Okay. On April 13, 2023, did something happen when you were there?
Yes,
What is that?
there was a disturbance, like kids messing with my dogs through the window,
Okay.
and it escalated to assault that night.
Okay. When you say kids messing with your dog, could you explain what were they doing?
They were barking through the window at my dogs.
Okay. And so, was this in an apartment building, a house?
Yes,
Okay.
it was like a house apartment.
Okay. And were these upstairs, downstairs, or?
The kids were in the yard.
Oh, the kids were in the yard. Okay.
I was upstairs trying to sleep through it.
Okay. And what were the dogs doing?
The dogs were barking back at the kids, barking at the dogs.
Okay. And what did you do when that happened?
That happened, I asked the kids can you please knock it off? And they started cussing at me.
And whose kids are these?
Anthony Price's,
Okay. And how do you know they're his kids?
because they call him dad.
Okay. And you live in the same building?
Yes.
All right. When you told them to stop, did they stop?
Oh, they started cussing me out.
Okay. And what did you do next?
I went to knock on his door,
Whose door?
Anthony's.
Okay. And what did he do?
He didn't answer.
Okay. What did you do next?
I had gotten on the phone with Nathan Harris and explained to him what was going on. By this time, Anthony had come down to my apartment, banging on the door. I opened it, and as soon as I opened it, it was, why the fuck are you knocking at my door?
Okay.
And I go to explain to him like, hey, you're kids. And he didn't care. He said, why the fuck are you knocking at my door?
Okay.
And I was still trying to explain, and he like lunged at me. And from there, I was just like, you know what, I'm not about to deal with this. And he lunged at me again. I slammed the door.
Okay. So, do you see Anthony in this courtroom?
Yes, I do.
Can you point and identify him for the
He's
record?
right there,
What article of clothing is he wearing?
white. Jacket.
You want to make the record reflect this witness has identified the defendant in this case?
Any objection to identification?
No objection, Your Honor.
Identification is noted.
And you said he lunged at you. Could you explain how he did that?
Well, my door was open, front, little back door. It was open, and I was explaining to him why I was knocking at his door. And he just like lunged at me like he was about to step foot into my house.
And what did you do?
After the second time, I slammed the door.
Okay. And what did he do next?
I think he went upstairs after that. I didn't see because the door was shut.
Okay. And what happened next?
What happened next? Nathan Harris pulled in the driveway. I went outside to explain to Nathan Harris what happened.
Okay. And then what happened next?
And Anthony, after a little altercation of his kids yelling at us, I was like, there's no point in arguing with no kids. Like, Anthony came out. And he came down to the very bottom step, like the third set of, or second set of steps, which are 3 steps. And he came off swinging at Nathan Harris.
Okay. And was he saying anything when he was swinging at him?
He was talking. I didn't really hear what he was saying, but he was talking.
And at some point, did you get involved in the physical altercation?
After the fact, after he stopped swinging on Nathan Harris and his dog had came out of the apartment, basically coming at me, which I thought was gonna attack me. And as soon as I went to get the dog, like kick the dog away, here comes Anthony, what looked like he was gonna get the dog, but he grabbed me by my hair and started punching me in the face repeatedly.
Okay. And this whole incident happened outside?
Yes,
And did this happen in Ingham County,
yes,
in the state of Michigan?
yes.
Okay, now, how many times did he swing at you?
That I could count and remember.
Okay, and was he using his fist?
Oh, his fist was closed.
Okay, and he was able to connect?
Oh, he connected every time.
Okay, so could you maybe show us to the jury how he was hitting you?
He had me by the hair and he was punching me.
And what were you doing at that point?
I couldn't do nothing. I really couldn't do nothing.
What was he saying at
Let
that
me
point?
stop you. I have to let the record reflect that she raised her left hand and was striking or making striking motions with her right hand. Is that accurate?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you can continue.
Thank you. And what was he saying at that point?
He wasn't saying nothing.
Okay. And what were you saying at that point? Did you say anything to him?
At the time, I couldn't say nothing.
And you said how many times did he hit you?
5 that I know.
Did you suffer any injuries as a result?
I had a broken nose. I still have dental work in the back of my teeth that need to be done.
Okay. And did you go to the hospital as a result of
Yes, I
this?
did go to the hospital.
Okay. Was there a prognosis of what happened?
I had shipped over all my records from the hospital at the beginning of the case, a couple months ago.
Okay. And after he hit you 5 times, what else happened?
After he hit me and Nathan started running over, he let go and ran up the stairs.
Okay. And what did you do next?
I called 911,
Okay.
which 911 was already on the phone, but they disconnected by the time I made it to my phone. Because he swatted my phone out of my hand as he was assaulting.
Okay. And what happened next after he ran upstairs?
He went come out, the cops came, the ambulance came, they took me.
Okay. And did anything else happen after that?
The children's mother arrived and spoke to the officers through the window, I believe. And she lied about her name. And she said Anthony was not home.
Okay. And after you said you went to the hospital?
Yes.
And basically that was the end of it. Did anything else happen?
Not after that, not that night. Well, the kids outside stalking our house, but
Okay. Thank you, Anna. That's all the questions I have.
Cross-examination.
Andrew stated that these story said that these kids were messing with your dogs through the window. Is that right?
yes,
Do you remember about what time of day that was?
it was like 10:30, 11 o'clock that night.
Where were you in your home?
I was in my bedroom.
Okay. Where were the dogs?
They were on my bed.
In the bedroom?
Yes, and there's 2 windows at the end of my bed that the dogs were peeking out of where the kids were barking at them.
How many dogs are we talking?
2,
And what sort of dogs are these?
a lab and a kid.
Okay, so larger, medium to large dogs. You know these children that were, you said barking at your dogs?
They were Anthony's kids.
Or do you know them by name?
No, I do not. They all have nicknames.
Now, how old are these children?
They were all under 16.
You have to guess, I mean, Under 16 is a big range.
It's like,
Objection, Your Honor, that calls for speculation and we do not allow guessing testimony.
Okay, I'll allow him to rephrase it, but I was gonna have a follow up, because all under 16 is 16-year age range.
16, in other words, they were not small. Would you say they were teenagers? Yeah. I think so.
some of them, yes.
You say
There's probably one that was under the age of 10, maybe.
How many children were present at this incident?
At the time, I want to say 4.
Four that were bothering your dogs?
Yes.
Sorry, just think their age range was, what was their age range? Or were they all teenagers?
Teenagers, preteens, yes.
But under 16? in your
Yes.
opinion? How did you respond to this when you realized that they were bothering your dogs?
I asked them to knock it off.
Did you go outside? Did you talk to them?
I talked to them through the window. I ain't go outside.
And what was their response to you?
They started cussing me out. So therefore, I went and tried to get the parent.
And you went, did you have to go outside to get the parent, as you said?
I knocked on the door and then I knocked on the front door.
Just trying to get an idea of how these apartments are laid out. Do you have to go
It's-
outside to get to that door?
Yes,
Okay. That's the upstairs, right?
Yeah.
So you had to go up some stairs to get to
Yeah.
apartment 3. What were the kids doing?
they were still out front messing with the dogs.
Is your window open or closed?
It was closed.
Did you make contact with anyone in apartment 3?
No, I did not.
So you said earlier you knocked on the door and there was no answer.
Yep, no answer at all.
And you went back home.
Yes, sir.
Were the kids still barking at the dogs? when you went
Yes,
back
they
home?
were.
Okay. Then at some point, you made contact with Anthony Price.
Yes, he came down to my apartment.
Where was Nathan Harris at this time?
He was gone at the laundry.
He was not at the location. at that
No,
address.
he was not.
Made contact with him at some point.
Yes, I was on the phone when he came knocking at the door
Why were you on the phone with him?
with Nathan Harris,
Yes.
because I was letting him know what was going on, because he lived in the apartment with me.
Why did you feel need to call him at that moment?
Objection, relevance.
Mr. Relevant?
But I'm trying to get some idea of how this situation escalated. All the researchers.
That's already been addressed, Your Honor.
Okay, I think it goes to credibility, so the objections are ruled. You can enter that.
I called him because this man, Anthony, had just lunged at me, and I couldn't, that's like, de-escalate his kids.
So I'm not super clear. At what point did you call Mr.
I called Mr. Harris right after I got back into the apartment, after knocking on Anthony's door,
Before you had any contact with him?
yes, just to let him know what was going on.
To let him know what?
Like, the kids were outside barking at the dogs. I was trying to sleep because I have to be up for work at 4:30.
Did you want Mr. Harris to do something about this or get involved?
Objection, speculation.
Well, I don't think she would have to speculate as to her intent. She knows what her intent on what she calls, so the objections are ruled. You can answer the
To be
question.
honest, I don't know why I called Nathan Harris.
All right, let me ask a question. You said Nathan Harris lives in the unit with you?
Yes,
Were you all in a dating relationship?
we were.
Okay, at the time of this incident, you were in a
No,
dating?
we at that time, we done broke up and we were just roommates.
Okay, gotcha. You can continue.
Mr. Harris did come home after you had called him, correct?
Yes,
When he arrived, where were you and where was Anthony Price?
I had came out to the car. Anthony was in his apartment,
Just to, sorry to stop you, but what, when you say came out to the car, where's that?
to the back, the driveway. It's out back of the house.
I see.
So I came down to explain to Nathan what was going on. Because I was irritated. I just wanted to vent about it. And that's when Anthony came down after we had gotten into a little altercation with the kids in his, I believe his daughter pulled out a blade.
Okay, this is new information to me. So going back, before Nathan ever arrived, you had, as you said, a little altercation with Anthony Price. And where were these 4 kids when this altercation happened?
Which are altercations.
The first contact that you had with Anthony Price.
The kids were out front.
So they're out front and you and Anthony are out back? Is that
Yes,
okay?
because that's our main doors is the back door.
So the kids are barking at your dogs, as you said. Is that a window out front of the house?
Yes, that's out front.
I see. So Anthony came downstairs from his apartment, is that right?
Yes.
And then did he knock on your door? How did he get your attention?
The first time,
Yes.
he came pounding on my door.
Okay. And you found it how?
I opened it.
Yeah, and I think this area has been asked and answered. It's been explored already.
Yeah, this, I think we're going back over the. correct order. I have a question that I guess falls in between one of your questions, though. You asked her about going downstairs to speak with Mr. Harris. Mr. Harris lived in the unit with you at the time?
Yes,
Why did you go downstairs to speak with him rather than him come upstairs?
because he was bringing laundry in too that night.
Okay, you were assisting him, is that what you were doing?
That's what I was going to do, but I was also explaining to him what was going on.
You can continue, counsel.
First altercation that you had with Mr. Price, the children were not in the back of the house, they were in front? Is that what you
Yes.
said? Okay. Then Mr. Harris arrived and you went to meet him in the car, correct?
Yes,
And then there was another altercation,
yes, yes,
and where were the children during that altercation?
in the side yard.
And where were you and Mr. Price and Mr. Harris?
Mr. Price was still in his apartment until I was fully down the stairs talking to Nathan. And the altercation with the kids happened.
So tell me about the altercation with the kids, because I think I missed that.
The altercation with the
Your
kids.
Honor, asked and answered, so I'm going to object to that line of question.
Objection sustained.
You had an altercation with the kids with Mr. Harris present,
Yes,
and then Anthony Price got involved
yes,
and continued the altercation.
yes.
I know further questions.
Indirect.
Ms. Kennebrew, we discussed earlier about this event occurring on April 13, 2023, is that correct?
Yes,
And that's almost a year now.
yes,
Is it fair to say your memory has faded a little bit about the events of that day?
a little bit, yes,
So you may not remember everything exactly as it happened, is that correct?
yes.
Is there a doubt in your mind today who assaulted you on that day?
No,
Is there a doubt in your mind today that you were hit 5 times by this defendant?
no.
Thank you, Your Honor. That's all the questions I have.
Any questions from the jury? May this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you may be excused, ma'am. Call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The next witness will be Nathan Harris.
Can you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're going to give is the truth and the whole truth under the penalty of perjury?
Yes, I do.
You can have a seat. There's a microphone that is in front of you. My court recorder is sitting behind you. She needs to be able to take down absolutely everything stated in the courtroom, so your responses must be loud and clear, and they must be verbal. So you can't do head nods, head shakes, or mm-hms and uh-hs, okay?
ma'am.
If you do that, we'll ask you if it's a yes or a no. If there's an objection from either attorney, you'll stop speaking immediately. I'll make a ruling on the objection, and then I'll tell you if you're allowed to give us that answer or not, okay? State your first and last name, spell both.
Nathan Harris, Nathan
You can proceed, counsel.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Harris, I want to take your attention to the events that happened on April 13, 2023. Do you remember that day?
Yes, sir.
What of significance happened on that day that brings us to this courtroom here today?
Me and my son's mom were assaulted that day.
Who assaulted you?
Anthony first.
Do you see Anthony Price in this courtroom here today?
Defendant.
Can you point an article of clothing he's wearing, the color?
Right there, white shirt, blue stripe.
You want to make the record reflect this witness as identified defendant in this case?
Any objection to the identification?
Objection.
So noted.
You said you were assaulted. How did this start?
Well, the assault started at the house, but I got a phone call. I was at the laundromat washing clothes at night. On my way home, I get a phone call saying that the upstairs neighbors' kids were out front barking at our dogs, and my kid's mom couldn't get to sleep. She had to wake up early, go to work the next morning. And the kids were outside out front of the house barking through the window at the dogs. She stated she asked the kids to knock it off and to please be quiet, and she was just
Can you stop for a second? Your Honor, is it possible to direct the defendant not to interfere the testimony in this case? I can overhear him.
If you're attempting to whisper to your attorney, you need to lower your voice, okay? That's for your own protection too. You don't want us to hear what you're whispering to. Understand? You can proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. So what happened when you got home?
well, I pulled in the driveway and I got out and I noticed Tiante and the two kids, the younger girls, out in the yard arguing back and forth. And I walked over to them and I asked her, why is she even arguing with two minor children? Where is their father at? That's who she should be talking to, is the father. These minor children shouldn't be out in the yard at 11 o'clock at night, regardless.
Okay.
And right then, I heard Anthony come out his door upstairs. So I turned around and I walked back towards the porch. And so I asked Anthony what the problem was. What's going on here? And he stated what I said 2 or 3 times until he got down to the bottom of the porch. And once he got to the bottom of the porch, he like leaped off the porch, trying to punch me. And when I deflected him and like got spun around, my shoe came off and I turned around and he was right there in my face. He grabbed a hold of me. He slammed me against the fence and I like bounced off the fence back towards the middle of the, or towards the house. And that's when I got my bearings back and I looked at him and he kept swinging. He swung and he swung and he swung. And
Was he
swung.
swinging towards you?
Yeah, he was trying to hit me in the face
Okay.
multiple times. Like,
And was he saying anything during this altercation?
well, I think so. He was, I don't remember
Okay.
verbally responding or hearing anything
What was his demeanor?
that he was gonna hurt me.
Okay.
His intentions were to either
Objection, Your Honor. I think he's
hurt me
speculating.
or
There's an objection. Excuse me?
Your Honor, I don't believe it'd be appropriate for Mr. Harris to speculate on my client's intentions.
Your Honor, he can try intentions based on what he was doing. I mean, clearly there's testimony that he was swinging repeatedly. So his intention is very clear on what he was doing, so he can definitely infer to intention.
Well, that's what his intent were, I guess, is a question for the jury.
Correct, Your Honor.
So he can't testify to what his intentions was. He can testify as to what he did. Now I'll allow him to do that, but he can't testify to what the intent was when he did it.
Thank you, Your Honor. So without telling us necessarily his intention, how many times did he swing at you?
I lost count around 7.
Okay. Did he ever connect at all?
Once on my shoulder. I threw my hand up like this and he punched me right here in the shoulder.
Okay. And what else happened after he connected?
He just like kept swinging at me every time I ducked back or dodged his punch. He'd come with another one, trying to punch me in a different direction.
And this incident happened at your house?
Yes,
And what was the address of this place?
416 West Genesee.
Income County, state of Michigan?
Yes.
Now, did you observe him hit anybody else?
Yes.
Who?
My son's mother, Tiante.
Okay. How many times did you?
5 times I counted.
And how was he hitting her?
Well, when he walked up to her, he grabbed her by the back of the hair, pushed her down, and uppercutted her in her face 5 times before I could get to him.
Did she suffer any injuries?
Oh yeah.
Did she have
Yeah.
any bleeding?
She spit half her tooth out in her hand.
Okay.
Her nose was broke, and the doctor said she got a concussion from it. So I'm pretty sure he connected pretty good.
Okay. And did the police end up getting called at that point?
Yes.
Okay. Is that the end of this altercation?
Yeah, that would be the end of the altercation. He picked up his dog and walked back upstairs.
Thank you, Anna. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you. Council Jim.
Mr. Harris, you said you got a phone call from Tiante. Canberra, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And that is how you learned that there was some sort of disturbance at your home.
Yes.
When you came home, what did you see when you arrived?
2 little girls out in the front yard yelling at the top of their lungs at my kid's mom.
So where were you when you took this?
Well, I was in my car and they were doing it the whole time until I backed into the driveway,
Where was your
got
car?
out and walked up to them.
Sorry to second, where's your car located?
Behind the house in a parking lot
Okay.
or parking space. Or
I think you said 2 little girls. What do you mean by little girls?
12, 13 years old.
Young kids,
Mm,
not little kids.
Yeah. Young girl.
Do you know these girls?
They are Anthony Price's daughters, as far as I know.
Have you ever spoken with them before?
Oh, yeah, multiple times.
So they're not strangers to you.
No.
So when you got out of the car.
Yeah.
And when did you have contact with Anthony Price?
After I walked out towards the front yard and asked Tiante why she was arguing with 2 13-year-old girls or whatever age they were, young minors is what I call them. And he must have heard me say that because he had walked right out the back door and said something over the railing to me as he was walking down the steps. So I walked back over to see what he was.
You just pause your brief. You say he said something to you.
Yeah, he said something like, "I'll be right down," or "I'll be right there," or something along that line.
Okay, sorry, go on.
So I turned around and me and Tiante walked back towards the back porch, which is our entrance to go to our home. And he was on his way down the steps and I asked him, "What's the problem?"
Okay.
And he said, "What's the problem? What's the problem? What's the problem? What's the problem?" And then he came jumping off the porch and tried to punch me, hit me a little bit, made me fall backwards into the fence, and he kind of scuffled with me a little bit, grabbed a hold of me and slammed me against the fence, and we scuffled around a little bit more, and then he tried swinging and swinging and he's swinging and he's swinging and he's swinging, but he was missing every shot at that
I'm
point.
sorry to stop, I think you've described this before, so.
I thought you didn't hear correctly because
So prior to this night, did you have any problems with Anthony Price?
no,
No.
not really.
So on this night, April 13th of 2023, you had this incident and the police came out, right?
The police came out probably 19 times that I've called the cops.
It was done at night.
Throughout that year before. I called the cops on them 19 times throughout the last year. That year.
On that particular night, so did you have any contact with Anthony Price after the police came out?
Not that. Oh.
Attempt to make contact with
They,
him?
I was instructed by the police not to even try to make contact with him. While he sat there and watched her get put in an ambulance through the window in the front yard.
You still live at that address?
No,
You
No.
you moved out,
I haven't lived there since 3 weeks before Christmas.
so December of last year.
Yeah.
Apologize if I asked this before, but I don't recall. When things got physical between Mr. Price and Mr. McGrew, where were the children at that time?
The two little girls were right there next to us pretty much the whole time.
Was that by the back porch?
Yes, yes, they were right in the vicinity. It was all enclosed. There's a fence all the way around it. So,
So is that where the stairs to apartment 3 come
yeah,
to the ground?
goes 1, 2, and then 3. He was all the way to the top. We're second floor, and then Miss Trina's on the bottom ground floor.
In other words, when he comes down the stairs, he's right there at the porch, which is near the entrance to your apartment.
And a flight.
Okay. So everybody was kind of in that area when
If
that
if I would have walked to my front porch, my door, I would have had to walk by him to get to it. By the time he got down the steps.
no further questions.
I have a quick question. You said you contacted the police 19 times. Was that after the
That
date?
was before the altercation. I called the cops on him 19 times.
I didn't finish my question.
Oh, I thought you did. I thought that was the question.
No, let the question finish. Was this after the date of April 13th, 2023? That you called the cops 19 times?
No,
Okay. So when you were questioned and asked if you had any issues with Mr. Price prior to that, is that accurate?
prior.
Prior to April 13th?
Before April or after?
Prior, that means before, April 13th. So why would you call the police on him 19
It
times
was-
before then?
It was because he was the parent to the children I was calling on.
Okay, so then it would not be accurate that you didn't have any issues with Mr. Price prior to that, if you called the police.
It would be his children that I was having the problems with.
So you called you called the police on their unit, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Redirect.
No, Your Honor.
Any questions from the jury? Okay. May this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
He may be excused. It's been about an hour, so I'm gonna give the jury a brief recess so they can stretch, get some water. They probably should go also and get their payment from Treasury while they're doing this. And then do you have any other witnesses for the prosecution?
No, Your Honor, the people rest.
That'll give the defense time to decide if they're calling witnesses. You're not free to deliberate at this time. This is just a quick break for you, okay? We'll be back in about 10, 15 minutes. All rise for the jury.
Excused. You may be excused.
Okay, you can be seated. Okay, Mr. Riley, you can call your witnesses.
Defense calls Anthony Price.
Your other right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're going to give is the truth and the whole truth under penalty of perjury? Thank you. You can have a seat there. You were present when I gave the instructions to the other witnesses. We need verbal responses. They should be loud and clear. No head nods, no head shakes, no mm-ms or uh-huhs. Otherwise, we'll ask you if that's a yes or no. And then lastly, if there's an objection from either side, you're gonna need to stop speaking immediately so that I can make a ruling on the objection and then tell you if you can give that answer or not, okay? Okay, you can proceed, counsel.
Price, on April 13th, 2023, were you living at 416 West Genesee?
Sir.
That's in the city of Lansing. You lived in an apartment at that residence, correct?
Yeah.
Speak up, Mr. Price.
Did Nathan Harris and Tiante Kennebrew also live at that address? In another apartment?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any incidents with those two individuals prior to April 13th?
Yes, I have.
Okay, tell me about the first one.
Black lady, my baby came to me and said that she spit on him. That's what I-
I'm sorry, what happened? I can't hear.
My youngest daughter,
Your youngest daughter?
yeah,
Okay.
said that.
Your Honor, I'm going to object at this time.
You need to stand up when you object, so we know objection's coming. Okay.
Yes, Your Honor. I'm going to object to this line of questioning. We're here for the events that happened on April 13th,
Okay.
2023. Anything that happened before or after is essentially going to confuse the jury. It's irrelevant and it's not relevant,
Okay.
useful for this part.
Okay. Did you want to respond to the objection?
Sure, and I think it's important to establish my client's relationship with these individuals and his sort of understanding of what's there. On April 13th.
Okay, I'm going to allow it because one of the prosecution's witnesses testified to having called the police on them 19 times prior to this incident. And so I'll allow him to lay some background information for that. So the objection's overruled.
So, just to back up, when did you move into that apartment?
Around November, December of 2022.
2022. That's about 5 or 6 months before the April date. My math is right.
I think so.
At the time you moved in, did Mr. Harris and his kids who already lived in the other apartment?
Yes, sir.
You had some disagreement with them prior to April.
That's me.
And they also had disagreements with your one or more of your children. Is that right?
Apparently,
Okay. I think you mentioned your youngest daughter. How old was she?
she's 11.
What,
Out.
what is her name?
Jamaica Park.
So going forward to April 13th, can you kind of start me out? How did you become aware that something was going on that you need to be aware of?
Every time I get out of work, someone always with me. They always coming up to me telling me what they did, what they said to them.
Specifically on April 13th, what happened? You know,
April what?
April 13th,
Oh, okay, so
2023.
April 13th, I was getting out of work. I just did a double. So I get out of work,
Just to be clear, double is how long?
16 hours.
Okay, so twice a normal shift.
Yes, sir. So I get home, I'm going to sleep. I just did two shifts. So I go to sleep and I wake up to people yelling at the top of their lungs at my babies. It was them. I mean, yelling crazy.
So to be clear, you say you wake up to people yelling. Where were these people located?
They were on the side of the house.
The side of the house is that front, back,
On the
left,
side,
right.
right on the side,
So not front or back, the side.
pretty much.
So how did you react to this?
I got up, put my shoes and I ran outside.
And you ran out, so you're on an upper floor,
Yeah,
correct?
so on the third floor.
When you run outside, what do you see? Do you see anything that's going on?
By the time I got downstairs, they both was trying to get to their house or whatever they were trying to do. I don't know. We met up at the end of the stairs.
Okay, now you mentioned kids, which kids are we talking about?
Now this was my oldest one, Sayana, or my second oldest, Sayana.
And then other kids that were there?
No, it was her friend.
Oh, her friend.
It was only two people, it was only not four. Just two.
Well, just to be clear, so two children, one of which is your daughter and one is her friend.
Yes.
And how old are these children?
One is 13. I don't know what her friend,
Probably around 13.
maybe not.
You don't know. So you came down the stairs. What did you, just back up, did you see anything before you got to the bottom of the stairs?
No. No laundry. I didn't see nothing.
What did you hear?
I heard them talking. Or yelling. Well, when I got downstairs, they was trying to get to the house, so I didn't hear nothing. But they heard me coming, and that's when they ended yelling at my kids, so they knew I was coming.
Okay. So you got downstairs, then what happened?
That's when the altercation happened.
So explain to me how the altercation started.
Well, he came at me, whatever his name is.
Say the gentleman who lived in the apartment.
Yes, sir. I proceed to attack him back.
Excuse me?
I proceed to attack him back.
Okay, I need you to use your outside voice because I think you were whispering louder than you're actually talking now. And I am struggling to hear what's coming out of your mouth. So what was your last statement?
I proceed to attack him back.
Okay, thank you.
So he's attacking back, so did he attack you?
Yes.
What did he do?
He tried to attack me. He tried to attack me while I was coming downstairs, but I swung at him and tried to run it.
Where were the kids at this time?
My kids was probably still in the front. I really don't know. They was probably still in the front. I don't know where they was at.
They were not at the bottom of the stairs.
It was somewhere out there.
Okay. So to be clear, did you come outside because you heard this yelling?
Yes.
And you hear your child and her friend yelling? Okay. Did you get a sense of who all was out there?
All I know, when the altercation happened, I seen my baby and I seen her friend out there. So that's what I seen her, whoever his name is.
You mentioned Mr. You don't know his name, but the gentleman who lived in apartment 2. Did Ms. Kinnebrew get involved at any point?
What was that?
Did the woman who lived in apartment 2?
Yes.
Okay. What did she do?
She put out a knife on me. She even attacked my dog.
Slow down. So the dog was there?
Yeah, my dog was in my house. I don't know how he got outside. But yes, my dog eventually came outside.
Came down the stairs?
Yes.
Okay. And what did Ms. Kinnebrew do?
She attacked my dog. I don't know what she had in her hand, but she hit my dog pretty hard to the point my dog started running and crying with the little.
You say she had something
She
there.
had something in her hand. She hit my dog very hard.
Was it dark outside?
Yes, sir.
You don't know what she had?
No.
Okay. So your dog ran away?
Yes.
And what did you do?
When I looked at her, she looked at me and put out a little knife, a little rainbow knife. Looked like she wanted to attack me too.
You say rainbow knife, what does that mean?
Like it had like blue, yellow, greenish colors on the blade.
Okay, like the metal was multicolored?
Yes, sir.
So when she pulled out that knife, how did you respond?
I thought she was gonna attack me. At this point, as I'm trying to, as we fighting or whatever you want to call it, I don't know what's going on right now. It's 2 against 1, so I don't know if she's gonna attack me or not. All I know is I looked over, she had a knife on me. It was times when I was trying to get my meal out my mailbox, and Mr. Harrison or whatever his name is had a knife in his head, kind of looking like he wanted to attack me to get my meal. That is big deal.
Those were separate incidents.
You know, I'm going to object to that answer because it's irrelevant.
It's irrelevant still.
What, I gotta respond as to what it's relevant and what's not. His response, you said was not relevant?
He is testifying to another incident involving male Joanna. That's not why we're here.
You want to respond to the objection?
I think that element of self-defense is the defendant's reasonable fear. That's what I'm saying.
Well, that's not what the incident was on that day. We're talking about a male on a separate day. If we're talking about self-defense, it has to be on the date of incident. What did he observe? What happened?
His statement was about male. I missed the statement because there were people being exited out of the courtroom under the sequestration order. What was the response that you want stricken?
Essentially, he is testifying that on a separate day, on another incident, he went to get mail and he felt threatened.
Threatened by these individuals?
Essentially, yes, Your Honor. And I'm objecting to that because one, it's not relevant. Two, if counsel's response was that he's testifying to the fact that he was acting in self-defense, but then why are we discussing an incident that happened on another day? Self-defense, as it is the law in the state of Michigan, it has to be about the event on that day, what he happened, what he perceived, and why he felt necessary to defend himself, not on a separate day.
Correct, but if he is explaining the nature of his relationship with his neighbors, as the foundation was laid in the direct of the alleged victims, there was questions about if they had prior incidents or had issues with this defendant prior to this.
Correct, and I believe that has been explored enough to an extent that we might be getting out of topic here. Your Honor.
Well, you asked your witness if they had any issues with this defendant prior to this incident, to which your witnesses testified no, then later testified that they called the 19 times on the officer. I mean, called the officers 19 times to the house on the children. And so at the bare minimum, this goes to credibility.
I understand.
So the objection's overruled.
Mr. Price, were you hit at any point during this altercation?
We tried to.
Or is that a no? Were you not hit?
Yeah.
So you had no injuries?
No.
No. So do you remember what time of day that occurred?
Like around 10. I just got out of work, going through shifts. So yes, that was around 10.
Was there any, did you have any other issues that night with the abusers?
I had no other issue.
No further questions.
That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Price, it's safe to say you do not get along with Nathan Harris and Tiante. You don't get along with them, right? That you guys simply are just not buds.
Actually, it's not me getting along. They don't get along with my baby.
Okay.
That's a kid.
In other words, the relationship is just not good between you and them. When you were testifying here earlier today, you said you attacked Nathan back. Is that correct?
Yes.
In fact, you were the first one to swing at him. Is that correct?
He tried to swing at me. He came up there lying, but yes, he swung at me, and I swung back at him.
Okay. You came from upstairs, is that correct?
Yes, sir. Third floor.
In fact, you were coming towards him, is that correct?
Pretty much.
Okay.
I came downstairs. Like he was.
But you were coming towards him as he was coming towards
pretty
you,
much
is
we
that
both
correct?
coming towards each other. I'm gonna say that.
So just listen to my question and then respond, okay? So you were coming to him as he was coming towards you, is that
Yes, sir.
correct? And you in fact swung at him, is that
He
correct?
swung at me.
Did you ever swing at him?
Yes, I did. After he swung at me,
How many times did he swing at you?
he swung one time.
And how many times did you swing at him?
I swung at him one time.
You never hit him any more than one time.
He started running.
You heard testimony here today that you pushed him,
Never pushed him. I never pushed him to the fence. We have a wooden fence. How you gonna bounce off a wooden fence? Make that make sense.
Okay. And you heard his testimony saying you swung at him multiple times, is that correct?
No. When I swung at him, he started running around.
Just listen to my question, just listen to my question. You heard his testimony saying you swung at him several times, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you heard his testimony here today that you hit him on the shoulder, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You heard testimony here from Tiante that you swung at her several times, is that correct?
Yes, I heard that.
You heard her testimony here today testifying that she had blood on her nose, is that correct?
Yes.
And you hit her several times, is that correct?
No.
You never hit her.
I heard it one time.
You hit her one time?
Yes, sir.
Why did you do that?
And she had a knife in her hand. I thought she was gonna attack me with that knife.
Do you remember testifying that you do not remember exactly what she had in her hand?
Like I said, when she hit my dog, I didn't know what was in her hand until I looked at her. She had a knife in her hand.
Okay,
That's what I said.
so you only hit her one time.
Yes, sir.
How did she break her tooth and have nosebleed?
Come on. Really? I don't know how she,
Okay,
a broken nose. Come on. Y'all know she.
okay.
Come on.
So how do you suggest those injuries occurred?
There wasn't no injury. If there was injury, where's the evidence?
Okay.
At least an evidence.
So after you say they attacked you, essentially that's your testimony here today, and that they started this whole thing,
Sir.
and you had nothing to do with it.
Say I had something to do with it. Talking to my kids. My kids have everything to do.
Okay,
I take care of them.
okay. Were you there when the police were called?
Yes, I was there.
Did you talk to the police?
I did not.
Why didn't you talk to the police?
I didn't come outside.
Okay, so you were attacked in this case, is that correct?
We both were.
Oh, so now you were both attacked, or?
I just said he swung at me and I swung back at him. That means we both pretty much attacked by each other.
Okay, but it was your testimony earlier that you were attacked, is that correct?
Yes.
So essentially, they started attacking you and you responded, right? Why didn't you talk to the police?
I didn't want to. But
Okay,
I couldn't hear you.
it's not a war.
were you scared?
Officer.
You were not scared at all. So how were you defending yourself if you were not scared?
Are you talking about the fight?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm scared, yeah. He's gonna attack me, of course. Who ain't gonna be scared? Then I know what type of people these people are. Yeah.
How tall are you, sir?
I'm 5'9".
Did you see Tiante's height when she was here? You were here, right?
Yeah.
Would you say she's shorter than you?
I'm the same height, I think.
You think you're the same height?
Yeah.
Okay, you
I
think
wasn't paying
she's,
attention.
you think she's 5'9", maybe?
Object, Your
I
Honor.
wasn't paying attention.
That's my client to speculate on something that he doesn't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Do you know how tall she is?
No?
Okay, he doesn't know.
Thank you. So on a different day, did you ever consider talking to the police about this incident, or did you just decide to let it go?
I'm trying to let it go.
Thank you, Anna. That's all the questions I have.
I just want to clarify a question that was asked, I think, from the cross-examination. Mr. Price, you testified that you ran downstairs and that you and Mr. Harris were coming at each other. Where were your children when this happened?
I think it was in the front. I'm not really sure. because
They were, your children were outside?
Yes, it was my second oldest, which was Sienna Price, and her friend. How I know that when everything settled down, them were the two I seen.
Okay.
So
Okay.
basically, I'm thinking it was them,
So what I'm trying to clarify is what prompted you to run outside?
because they was yelling at my kids like they was gonna do something to me.
And your
Like,
kids
yelling
were
very, very
downstairs?
loud. You said what?
And your kids were downstairs?
Yes, ma'am.
Any redirect?
Mr. Price, is it true that you no longer live at that address when this occurred?
Yes, that's true.
You bought some time after this incident?
Yes, sir.
Have you had any contact with Mr. Harris or Ms. Neighbors since you moved out?
Any questions from the jury?
I have one.
Okay, if you can write it down and then. Okay, so this is not necessarily a question for this witness. And so this, I'll let the attorneys review this. And I don't know, yes, please. I don't know if you all are planning to call rebuttal witnesses, but can this witness be excused from the stand?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Price. You can be excused from the stand.
Call her as a rebuttal witness.
You'll call, okay. You're gonna call a rebuttal witness?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any other witnesses at this time? Mr. Raleigh?
No, you're sorry.
Okay, you can proceed with your rebuttal witness. Call your witness.
Your Honor, the people choose not to call a rebuttal witness at this time, and the people rest at this time.
Okay, thank you. As to the question about additional evidence, there will be no evidence submitted in support to respond to that question, okay? We're going to take a brief break so that we can go over some final instructions. This again is not the time for you to discuss the case. You'll do that after you get the final instructions. Then you'll be free to deliberate. Now it's just time for you to stretch, get some water, and we'll see if administration can bring you some snacks, okay? All rise for the jury.
Show that he was being attacked or whether he was acting in defense of anything. He heard people yelling and he came out where the alleged fight is, and therefore that negates necessarily the defense of self-defense. And so for those reasons, we would object.
That's,
on that.
I think that would not accurately categorize his testimony, because he stated he came downstairs because his children were down there and that the defendant, I mean, the witnesses or the victims were yelling at his children. Is that accurate as to what his testimony was?
As far as I remember, Your Honor, that is
Okay.
correct.
Okay, and so that would be defense of others, no?
I understand, Your Honor, it would probably be defense of others. However, people yelling is not sufficient to say that someone is being attacked. So,
Adults yelling at your children or speaking to your children in a way that you perceive to be aggressive, I think would be more than sufficient basis for a defense of others, self-defense to be entered on the jury instruction. So I'm gonna note your objection, it's overruled,
thank you.
based on the testimony and the foundation that's been laid.
Thank you, Your Honor.
To be clear, and I think there's also testimony that Mr. Price himself felt threatened in one or more moments during the investigation.
I understand that, but the basis of his objection was the act of the defendant going downstairs is what would make him,
I think that could be in defense of others, but there are other acts that could be in defense of the.
that's correct, but going downstairs when your minor children are downstairs engaging in an altercation with adults.
I just want to be clear, I think we've got both. I think you've got defense of others and defense of oneself.
Okay, sounds good. Nonetheless, you want 7.21, is that correct?
I might have an old copy of the jury instructions, but I think it's 7.22.
Okay, use of, they're correct. You have the correct copy. 7.22, use of non-deadly force will be added. Let's see.
Would it be possible to have a brief conversation with my client?
That's fine. I'm gonna send you these as well to review and let me know if you have changes.
All rise.
Thank you. You can be seated. Okay, we're ready for our final instructions. If you can look at the screen one last time and bear with us while we go over the composite instructions and evidence. Okay, members of the jury, the evidence and arguments in this case are finished, and I will now instruct you on the law as it applies in this case. Remember that you have taken an oath to return a true and just verdict based only on the evidence and my instructions on the law. You must not let sympathy or prejudice influence your decision. As jurors, you must decide what the facts of this case are. This is your job and no one else's. You must think about all the evidence and then decide what each piece of evidence means and how important you think it is. This includes whether you believe what each of the witnesses said. What you decide about any fact in this case is final. It is my duty to instruct you on the law. You must take the law as I give it to you. If a lawyer says something different about the law, follow what I say. At various times, I have already given you some instructions about the law. You must take all of my instructions together as the law you are to follow. You should not pay attention to some instructions and ignore others. To sum up, it is your job to decide what the facts of the case are, to apply the law as I give it to you, and in that way decide the case. A person accused of a crime is presumed to be innocent. This means that you must start with the presumption that the defendant is innocent. This presumption continues throughout the trial and entitles the defendant to a verdict of not guilty unless you are satisfied beyond a reasonable doubt that he is guilty. Every crime is made up of parts called elements. The prosecutor must prove each element of the crime beyond a reasonable doubt. The defendant is not required to prove his innocence or to do anything. If you find that the prosecutor has not proved every element beyond a reasonable doubt, then you must find the defendant not guilty. A reasonable doubt is a fair, honest doubt growing out of the evidence or lack of evidence. It is not merely an imaginary or possible doubt, but a doubt based on reason and common sense. A reasonable doubt is just that, a doubt that is reasonable after a careful and considered examination of the facts and circumstances of this case. When you discuss the case and decide on your verdict, you may only consider the evidence that was properly admitted in this case. Therefore, it is important for you to understand what is evidence and what is not evidence. Evidence include only the sworn testimony of witnesses, the exhibits admitted into evidence, and anything else I told you to consider as evidence. Many things are not evidence, and you must be careful not to consider them as such. The fact that the defendant is charged with a crime and is on trial is not evidence. The lawyer's statements and arguments are not evidence. They are only meant to help you understand the evidence in each side's legal theories. You should only accept things the lawyers say that are supported by the evidence or by your own common sense and general knowledge. The lawyer's questions to the witnesses and my question to the witnesses are not evidence. You should consider these questions only as they give meaning to the witnesses' answers. My comments, ruling, questions, and instructions are also not evidence. It is my duty to see that the trial is conducted according to the law and to tell you the law that applies in this case. However, when I make a comment or give an instruction, I am not trying to influence your vote or express a personal opinion about the case. If you believe that I have an opinion about how you decide the case, you must pay no attention to that opinion. You are the only judges of facts, and you should decide this case based from the evidence. At times during the trial, I have excluded evidence that was offered or stricken testimony that was heard. Do not consider those things in deciding the case. Make your decision only on the evidence that I let in and nothing else. Your decision should be based on all the evidence regardless of which party produced it. You should use your own common sense and general knowledge in weighing and judging the evidence, but you should not use any personal knowledge you may have about a place, person, or event. To repeat once more, you must decide this case based only on the evidence admitted during the trial. As I said before, it is your job to decide what the facts of this case are. You must decide which witnesses you believe and how important you think their testimony is. You do not have to accept or reject everything a witness said. You are free to believe all, none, or part of any person's testimony. In deciding which testimony you believe, you should rely on your own common sense and everyday experience. However, in deciding whether you believe a witness's testimony, you must set aside any bias or prejudice you may have based on race, gender, or national origin of the witness. There is no fixed set of rules for judging whether you believe a witness, but it may help you to think about these questions. Was the witness able to see or hear clearly? How long was the witness watching or listening? Was anything else going on that might distract the witness? Does the witness seem to have a good memory? How did the witness look and act while testifying? Did the witness seem to be making an honest effort to tell the truth, or did the witness seem to evade the questions or argue with the lawyers? Does the witness's age or maturity affect how you judge his or her testimony? Does the witness have any bias, prejudice, or personal interest in how this case is decided? Have there been any promises, threats, suggestions, or other influences that affected how the witness testified? In general, does the witness have any special reason to tell the truth or any special reason to lie? All in all, how reasonable does the witness's testimony seem when you think about the other evidence in the case? Sometimes the testimony of different witnesses will not agree, and you must decide which testimony you accept. You should think about whether the disagreement involves something important or not, or whether you think someone is lying or simply mistaken. People see and hear things differently, and witnesses may testify honestly, but simply be wrong about what they thought they saw or remembered. It is also a good idea to think about which testimony agrees best with the other evidence in the case. However, you may conclude that a witness deliberately lied about something that is important to how you decide the case. If so, you may choose not to accept anything that witness said. On the other hand, if you think the witness lied about some things but told the truth about others, you may simply accept the part you think is true and ignore the rest. The prosecutor must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the crime occurred on or about April 13, 2023, within the city of Lansing, Ingham County. When you go to the jury room, you may take a written copy of the jury instructions along with your notes. You should first choose a foreperson. The foreperson should see to it that the discussions are carried out in a business-like way and that everyone has a fair chance to be heard. During your deliberations, please turn off your cell phones or other communication equipment until we recess. A verdict in a criminal case must be unanimous. In order to return a verdict, it is necessary that each of you agrees on that verdict. In the jury room, you will discuss the case among yourselves, but ultimately each of you will have to make up your own mind. Any verdict must represent the individual considered judgment of each juror. As you discuss the case, you should think about all my instructions together as the law you are to follow. It is your duty as jurors to talk to each other and to make every reasonable effort to reach an agreement. Express your opinions and the reasons for them, but keep an open mind as you listen to your fellow jurors. Rethink your opinions and do not hesitate to change your mind if you decide you were wrong. Try your best to work out your differences. However, although you should try to reach an agreement, none of you should give up your honest opinion about the case just because other jurors disagree with you or just for the sake of reaching a verdict. In the end, your vote must be your own and you must vote honestly and in good conscience. Possible penalty should not influence your decision. It is the duty of the judge to fix the penalty within the limits provided by law. If you want to communicate with me while you are in the jury room, please have your foreperson write a note and give it to my court officer. It is not proper for you to talk directly with the judge, lawyers, court officers, or other people involved in the case. As you discuss the case, you must not let anyone, including me, know how your voting stands. Therefore, until you return with a unanimous verdict, do not reveal this to anyone outside the jury room. When you go to the jury room to deliberate, you may take your notes and full instructions. If you want to look at any of the reference documents, which we don't have any, or exhibits, which we don't have any, that were admitted, if they were admitted, you would just ask for them. When you go to the jury room, you will be given a written copy of the instructions you have heard throughout this case. As you discuss the case, you should think about all of my instructions together as the law you are to follow. You may return a verdict of guilty of the alleged crime or not guilty. There were two counts, so it'll be identified clearly on the verdict form. And we've prepared possible verdict forms listing these possible verdicts. Facts can be proven by direct evidence from a witness or an exhibit. Direct evidence is evidence about what we actually see or hear. For example, if you look outside and see rain falling, such as today, that is direct evidence that it is raining. Facts can also be proved by indirect or circumstantial evidence. Circumstantial evidence is evidence that normally or reasonably leads to other facts. So taking that same example, if you see a person coming from outside wearing a raincoat covered with small drops of water, that would be circumstantial evidence that it is raining. You may consider circumstantial evidence. Circumstantial evidence by itself or a combination of circumstantial evidence and direct evidence can be used to prove the elements of the crime. In other words, you should consider all evidence that you believe. When the lawyers agree on a statement of facts, these are called stipulated facts, and you may regard such stipulated facts as true, but you are not required to do so. We did not have any stipulated facts in today's case. The defendant's intent may be proved by what he said, what he did, how he did it, or by any other fact and circumstances in evidence. You have heard testimony from a witness who was a police officer. That testimony is to be judged by the same standards you use to evaluate the testimony of any other witness. You should not decide this case based on which side presented more witnesses. Instead, you should think about each witness and each piece of evidence and whether you believe them. Then you must decide whether the testimony and evidence you believe proves beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty. Again, the elements of the crime of assault and battery. The defendant is charged with the crime of assault and battery. To prove this, the prosecutor must have proved beyond a reasonable doubt, first, that the defendant committed a battery upon a Nathan Harris and a Tiante Kennebrew. A battery is a forceful, violent, or offensive touching of the person or something closely connected with the person of another. The touching must have been intended by the defendant, that is not accidental, and it must have been against Nathan Harris or Tiante Kennebrew's will. It does not matter whether the touching caused an injury. Second, that the defendant intended either to commit a battery upon Nathan Harris and Tiante Kennebrew or to make Nathan Harris and Tiante Kennebrew reasonably fear an immediate battery. The definition of force and violence, as used in these instructions, the words force and violence mean any use of physical force against another person as to harm or embarrass him or her. The definition of touching, for a battery to occur, the touching must have been intended by the defendant, that is not accidental, and it must have been against Ms. Kennebrew and Mr. Harris's will. It does not matter whether the touching caused an injury. An assault does not have to cause an actual injury. However, if there was an injury, you may consider the injury with the other evidence in determining whether there was an assault. The defendant claims that he acted in lawful self-defense of himself and of others. A person has the right to use force to defend himself and another person under certain circumstances. If a person acts in lawful self-defense of himself and or others, actions are justified and he is not guilty of the crime of assault, assault and battery. You should consider all the evidence and use the following rules to decide whether the defendant acted in lawful self-defense of himself or of others. Remember to judge the defendant's conduct according to how the circumstances appeared to him as he acted. First, when he acted, the defendant must have honestly and reasonably believed that he had to use force to protect himself or others from the imminent unlawful use of force by another. If his belief was honest and reasonable, he could act at once to defend himself or others, even if it turns out later that he was wrong about how much danger he or others were in. Second, a person is only justified in using the degree of force that seems necessary at the time to protect himself or the other person from danger. The defendant must have used the kind of force that was appropriate to the attack made and the circumstances as he saw them. When you decide whether the force used was what seemed necessary, you should consider whether the defendant knew about any other ways of protecting himself or others, but you may also consider how the excitement of the moment affected the choice the defendant made. Third, the right to defend oneself or another person only lasts as long as it seems necessary for the purpose of protection. Fourth, the person claiming self-defense must not have acted wrongfully and brought on the assault. However, if the defendant only used words, that does not prevent him from claiming self-defense if he was attacked. The burden of proof for self-defense. The defendant does not have to prove that he acted in self-defense. Instead, the prosecutor must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant did not act in self-defense. Closing arguments.
Thank you. What is the problem? What is the problem? What is the problem? Why the fuck are you banging on my door? Ladies and gentlemen, those are not my words. Those are that man's words. Straight from his mouth. Talking to those two on the date of this incident. He's claiming self-defense. Well, let's think about it, right? Are those words usually uttered by someone who is scared? Do those words make sense to someone who sat on the stand here today and told us, of course I was scared, it was 2 against 1. But yet, when he was dealing with Tiante, he went downstairs to her unit and said, why the fuck are you banging on my door? Are you scared man? Are those words of a scared man? That's what you're here to judge. Ladies and gentlemen, there's no hiding that these two sides don't get along. They're not buddies. He testified to that. He was honest, I'll give him credit. And I'm sure if we brought Nathan and Tiante here, they'd say, yeah, of course we don't get along. I mean, there was testimony here that they've called on him 19 times. There's clearly, these people do not get along. But here's the question. Does that give him the right to attack both of them in a manner that he did? Adults, we don't get along because life happens. But when things cross the line is when things get physical, which on April 13th, it did. What is the problem? It is the problem. Well, Mr. Prosecutor, tell us how. Well, I told you I carry the burden of proof in this case. And I believe in this case, the evidence has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that this defendant attacked those two victims on April 13, 2023. And he did so, and we have proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Of the three adults who were involved in that altercation, only two have come here and told you, I got punched. I got assaulted something. Only he said, oh, he swung at me, but he missed. And I swung at him. Nathan testified, he shoved him into a fence and he hit him on his shoulder. Tiante testified that he grabbed her by the hair and swung at her 5 times. Not once, not twice, not thrice, 5 times. She had to go to the hospital. He didn't. She had to go to the hospital for a broken tooth and a broken nose. You heard today from the police officer that she went to the hospital. She told you she went to the police officer. She told you she went to the hospital as well. You heard testimony from her, from the police officer, from Nathan Harris, testifying that she suffered and sustained these injuries. 3 people. He's unscathed. But oh, he was attacked that day. That's why he did so what he did. Okay, let's talk about self-defense then. Why are you going to knock on her door and lunging at her? Is that someone who was scared? I don't think so. You heard him testify that he and her and Tiante are the same height. You saw them walk to the stand and leave. It's up to you to decide if they are the same height or not. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a reason we have these jury trials. People's memories are not always accurate. I had Tiante sit here and testify today. These events occurred on April 13, 2023. It's April 2024, almost a year. Of course, there's going to be inconsistent. Some little facts are going to not match because people forget, because life happens. But I asked her, are you confused as to who hit you that day? She said, no, forcefully. Are you confused that you sustained injuries? No. There is no question in her mind. He hit her 5 times. Let's talk a little bit about self-defense then. You heard the judge mentioning instructions saying the force must be necessary, even for argument's sake. Let's assume, yes, he was defending himself. So he goes, he attacks Nathan because Nathan was the first one to go swing at him. So he swung at him. And so he's dealing with Nathan. He didn't testify that at any point Tiante was on his back or anything. He wasn't being attacked simultaneously. He finishes with Nathan. He turns over to Tiante and whacks her 5 times. Again, he doesn't say Nathan was on my back when I'm attacking this other person. No, it's one at a time, as if there was some agreement. Was that amount of force necessary, even if we were to agree there was self-defense? I don't think so. I don't think so. The attack only should last as necessary as to neutralize the threat. This went way beyond. Breaking someone's tooth while you're fighting them separately, it's almost as if they are waiting. Okay, I'm just gonna wait for him to finish attacking her. There's no self-defense for the ladies and gentlemen. There's no self-defense. Like I said,
I carry the burden of proof. And I believe I've proven this case beyond a reasonable doubt that this defendant, Nathan Harris and Tiante Kennedy, and the evidence has proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Of course, we would love to see some video of it happening to know everything, but we don't. Does that deny you? Does that make proof beyond a reasonable doubt questionable? Absolutely not. We all wish we could witness it. Then we wouldn't be here because you would know it happened. You would know it happened because you saw it with your own eyes. But based on the evidence we've presented here, it's okay to have doubt. Of course, we weren't there. I wasn't there. But is that doubt reasonable under these circumstances? I don't think there's a reasonable doubt here. And for those reasons, ladies and gentlemen, I believe you should find this defendant guilty beyond reasonable doubt. Thank you.
Mr. Rose.
My opening statement, I said, a lot of things are gonna be said here today. Some of them will be contradictory, some of them will make sense. I think that is exactly what. Depending on whether you ask Tiante Kennedy or Nathan Harris, getting a couple different versions of what might have happened. If we have to ask my client to get in there. There were 4 kids there. There were 2 kids. Where did the fight happen? Inside the apartment, outside? Were the kids there? Were they up front? Here's what I know. My client is responsible for 2 children, his daughter and her friend. When he heard they were being yelled at by adults, he came downstairs fast. He was responsible for those children. He got downstairs, he himself was in danger. Felt threatened by 2 grown adults who saw him. He had to do his own defense. Self-defense is valid, defense of others is valid. These are rights that we have. We have the right to defend ourselves, to defend our children. We have the right to be safe in our homes, in our communities, not be threatened, insulted by our neighbors. Ask me to take that into consideration today. The prosecution story. The client just got mad and insulted his neighbors. This happened. My client tells a story that I think makes a lot more sense. Went to double, got home and went to bed. He heard his daughter and her friend being yelled at. He got scared and he had to get involved. He himself saw danger, flying fists, and then his dog running with fear. He did what he felt he had to do. I think what he did was completely reasonable. I'm a client.
Briefly.
Thank you, Honor. I want to respond to a couple points defense is making. Defendant acted in self-defense and in defense of others. He saw a knife and his dog was attacked. So he acted accordingly. Why didn't you talk to the police? I mean, your children were being yelled at. It was bad enough that you had to come all the way from upstairs to downstairs. It was bad enough that you had to punch someone 5 times, breaking their tooth and nose. It was bad enough that you had to fight 2 people simultaneously. It was bad enough that your dog was being attacked by these 2 people against just you, your dog, and 2 girls. But you don't want to talk to the police. How come? If it was that bad. You heard Officer Moore. He talked here today. He said he couldn't find them. And he said, I didn't want to talk to the police. Is he really the victim here? If it was that bad? I don't think so. Reasonable doubt is a doubt that is based on reason and common sense. That's it. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, one of you all is not gonna be responsible to go and deliberate because you are serving as an alternate juror. Select a number out of my law school cup. Juror number 2, thank you for your service. You are free to go. If you had anything in the jury room, we can get you in there to get your things. Okay, the remaining 6 of you will be excused to deliberate. You'll get a copy of the full instructions that we read during the trial. There were no exhibits admitted. You again need to remember to choose a 4-person before you can carry out your deliberations. You may take your notes with you to the extent that you have any. If there's a question, your 4-person will write that question down, knock on the door, and a court officer will be right outside to deal with you, okay? Before I release you, let me swear my court officer and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you will, to the utmost of your ability, keep persons sworn as jurors on this trial from separating from each other, that you will not suffer any communication to be made of them or any orally or to them orally or otherwise, and that you will not communicate with them or any of them orally or otherwise except by order of this court until they shall be discharged?
I do.
Thank you. All rise for the jury. You may be excused to deliberate. Okay, we're in recess until the time that the jury either has a verdict or a question, so you don't want to go far, okay? You can be seated. Okay, my understanding is that you all have reached a verdict. Oh, careful. Reached a verdict, is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And you have chosen a foreperson?
Yes.
Is that you, sir? Okay, juror number one, can you please rise and read your verdict?
Count one, assault and battery on Nathan Harris, finding not guilty. Count two, assault and battery on Tiante Kinnebrew, finding him guilty.
Okay, did you want the jury polled?
No, Your Honor. No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, for your service today. Again, this process relies heavily upon your participation and your willingness to appear for that participation. So thank you for being attentive and engaged in this participation of the judicial system. And we thank you for your service. You'll be excused now. You'll follow the direction of Mr. Whitman. All rise for the jury. Okay, you can be seated. Did you take the jury form? I probably should have gotten that. We have count one, a not guilty, count two, guilty. Let's see, this matter will be set for sentencing. As to count two. And he needs to see probation.
Do May 21st at 9.
May 21st at 9 a.m. When you leave here today, you'll go downstairs to probation and check in with them, okay? We'll get you set up for a pre-sentence interview. We got to get you a referral. Do you have any questions today? Okay, any additional matters for today's record?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. We're off the record.